good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here at this fabulous venue as part of the second Kerala Literature Festival. My talk is called India at 70, a historian's report card. So later this year, the nation will complete 70 years of age. And looking back at this fairly long and complicated journey, how have we done? And I'm going to begin by acquainting you with Mahatma Gandhi's definition of Swaraj. In 1921, that is long before independence, but at a time when the opposition to British rule was gathering momentum, Gandhi offered a definition of Swaraj where he compared Swaraj of freedom with a bed that had 4 sturdy legs. And these legs of the bed were, in Gandhi's view, non-violence, Hindu-Muslim harmony, abolition of untouchability, and economic self-reliance or Swadeshi. And I'm going to use Gandhi's interpretation of those 4 legs of Swaraj. And I'm going to suggest that by non-violence, Gandhi meant democracy. He meant that when India became free, debates and disputes between different sects of Indians would be resolved non-violently, not through the force of arms. So just as we fought against the British using the weapon of satyagraha, once we gained independence, in a democracy, debate and argument, not violence, would constitute the lifeblood of democracy. Gandhi's second pillar of Swaraj was Hindu-Muslim harmony. And I'm going to define that more broadly as meaning religious and linguistic pluralism. You know, in Gandhi's original definition of the flag, green was for Islam, saffron was for Hindus, and the white in between was for all the other religions embraced by the 2 major religions. So pluralism of faith, that India was not going to be a Hindu Pakistan. Every single Indian would have the freedom to follow the religion of his or her choice, or indeed no religion at all, if you wish to. But Gandhi also believed in the pluralism of language. Gandhi said, as early as 1920, that when India became free, India would be reconstituted on the basis of linguistic states. Every major linguistic community would have its own state. Now, Gandhi's third pillar was abolition of untouchability. I'm going to again broaden the definition. Discrimination against lower castes was a pervasive feature of traditional Indian society. But so was discrimination against women. The 2 fundamental forms of inequality in India were, and often are, along the axis of caste and gender. And finally, of course, Gandhi's emphasis on economic self-reliance, the removal of poverty and of dependence on foreign economic forces. So freedom in Gandhi's vision had 4 components: political freedom, social freedom, cultural freedom, and economic freedom. And 70 years after independence, how free are the citizens of India? And I'm going to investigate each of these 4 components. Democracy, pluralism, that is political freedom, social freedom in terms of caste and gender, cultural pluralism in terms of religion and language, and finally economic freedom. And let me begin with political freedom or democracy. The time and place Indians are most free is when they vote in a panchayat, legislative or national election. That's when we are most free. When we go to the voting booth, it is our choice. In the 1950s and 60s, when adult franchise was introduced in India, women voted as their husbands told them to do. Dalits in the village voted as the landlord or zamindar told them to do. That is all gone. Now we are completely free to choose the candidate or party of our choice, and the conduct of elections is absolutely above scrutiny. The Election Commission of India is the one Indian institution respected for its impartiality, where many other public institutions have become corrupted, politicized. That's not true of elections. So this is the time we are free, when we vote, and in my view, the holding of regular, free and fair elections is perhaps the greatest single achievement in independent India. And it is such a remarkable achievement because it was counterintuitive. Never before had a poor and largely illiterate country gone for universal adult franchise. Countries were supposed to be rich and educated before they could grant the vote to their citizens. When the first general election was held in 1952, a famous Madras editor dismissed it as the biggest gamble in history. He said you cannot trust poor illiterate people to vote and to vote sensibly. But that's not been the case. Once upon a time I was on a panel, many years ago, I was on a panel in University of California with an Indonesian scholar, an Indonesian dissident who had been exiled by General Suharto. And I was making some criticisms about our democracy, and he said, Ram, at least in your country, you have general elections. In my country, we have the election of the generals. And that of course is true in Pakistan, it's been true in Bangladesh and many other places. So this is the single greatest achievement of independent India, is the holding of free, fair and regular elections. Now, democracy is not just about elections. It is also about freedom of movement and association. Here too, India has been largely successful. We are free in China, for example. I know there are many people in this state who have a fascination with China. And previously they had a fascination with Soviet Union and with Cuba. In countries like Soviet Union and Cuba and China, you are not free to do a dharna in the streets. If you want to move from the village to the city to get a job, you have to get a permit from the party office. And this does not obtain in India. We are free to move where we want, work whom we want, make our own friends, our own colleagues, and this is also a considerable achievement. At the same time, when it comes to democracy or political freedom, there are some deficiencies, there are weaknesses. One area where there is a deficit regards to freedom of expression. Writers, artists and filmmakers in India are not as free as writers, artists and filmmakers in Sweden or Canada or the United States. There are many curbs. Part of these curbs are because of our archaic colonial laws. Some of them are because of incompetent police force. Some of them are connected to the rise of identity politics, where the icon of every caste, linguistic group, region or religion is above scrutiny or criticism. I spoke on this topic last week in my Tumchen Memorial Lecture at great length, that there are curbs to freedom of expression in India. So, at one level we hold regular elections. We are free to protest, to choose our friends, to move across our country. But there are curbs on artistic expression, and an even greater blow on our democratic credentials is the arbitrary and often brutal behavior of the police and the paramilitary. A police force is supposed to be fair, impartial, and impose and make sure that there is law and order. But if someone calls you to a police station, you better be scared. Because instead of meeting justice, you may meet the lathi or worse. The condition of under trials, the brutalization of prisoners, the horrible condition of our prisons, the food, the medical facilities is a blot to our democracy. Similarly, or even More tellingly, when it comes to conflict zones like Kashmir or Nagaland or Manipur, the violence used by the state, by police and paramilitary is excessive. And sometimes this violence may be provoked. If there is a Maoist insurgency in Bastar, where armed insurgents are trying to overthrow the state has to protect itself. But in the process of protecting itself, if it rapes tribal women, if it tortures Adivasi men, and those responsible for these rapes and crimes, the policemen and the officers, go unpunished, this is a blot on our democracy. So, when it comes to that first pillar of democracy, a first pillar of Swaraj, democracy, it is a little bit wobbly. It is quite sturdy, but a little bit wobbly. I now move to the second pillar of Swaraj, caste and gender equality. What progress have we made here? As I said in my opening remarks, historically, India's dominant religion, Hinduism, seriously and massively discriminated against Dalits and low castes. Historically, India's two major religions, Islam and Hinduism, seriously and cruelly discriminated against women. India historically has a very bad record when it comes to gender equality. Now, the Indian Constitution, who's drafted or finalized by B.R. Ambedkar, sought to do away with both caste discrimination and gender discrimination. So the Constitution abolished untouchability and gave women equal rights to men. And in both cases, what the Constitution was trying to do was to bring modern values and norms to an ancient and prejudiced society. A society that for 1,000 years had practiced caste and gender discrimination was now being told, in a modern democracy, such discrimination has no place. So the law abolished discrimination. The law abolished untouchability. The law made women equal to men. But is the practice always the same as the law? And of course, that's not true. In some states, great progress has been made. I think Kerala is a state that can be proud of having made greater progress than other states. I know someone is shaking their head. But please come to Bihar and Madhya Pradesh and you will understand what I'm saying. Okay, so please, not perfect progress. Please listen carefully to what I'm saying before you shake your head. Not perfect progress, more progress. Had it not been for reformers like Narayana Guru onwards, Dalits would be even more discriminated in India. Had it not been for a series of feminists and educationists, women would have been even more discriminated in Kerala. So please listen carefully to what I'm saying. Kerala has made more progress, not perfect. It has not achieved perfection, equality, but it has made more progress than other parts of India. Other parts of India are in fact worse. Attacks on Dalits are particularly acute in neighboring Tamil Nadu, more so than in Kerala. Or in Punjab, the situation of women in North India is much worse than in South India. In South India it is not equal, but in North India it is much worse. But, and this is important for a historian to recognize, because a historian is not an ideologist. A historian does not talk in black and white. It's important for a historian to recognize, while great deal of discrimination continues against women and Dalits, there has also been progress. And I will give you some examples of progress. One major example of progress is over the last 60 years, we have seen a loosening of the link between caste and occupation. Traditionally, you were born into your father's occupation if you were a man and you had no choice to change it. A sweeper would be a sweeper. A sweeper's son would be a sweeper. A priest's son would be a priest. A peasant's son would be a priest. An artisan's son, a peasant's son would be a peasant. An artisan's son would be an artisan. And there's a loosening of a link to caste and occupation. With economic growth, with social mobility, with democracy, more people can abandon their hereditary occupation for occupations they consider more dignified, more worthwhile. So, for example, Baniyas who are traditionally merchants can become teachers. Yadavs who are traditionally farmers are now, many of them are in the Indian army. And Dalits can even become entrepreneurs. There is even now a Dalit Chamber of Commerce. So there is a loosening of the link between caste and occupation. That's one aspect of progress. The other aspect of progress, which applies to women, is the loosening of the link between family and marriage. My grandmother was married at the age of 10 to a man she had never seen. My mother was married to a man after she completed her BA, but still within the same caste, and the parents have to approve. My daughter can marry whoever she pleases. Even against my views, I can't stop her. So, there is a loosening of the link between family and marriage. There is a loosening of the link between caste and occupation. And this loosening of these twin links, one which leads to the emancipation of lower castes, one which leads to the emancipation of women, is much more visible in cities, less so in the countryside. My daughter is lucky because she lives in Bengaluru. If she lived in rural Tumkur or Anantapur, her brutal father would still tell her what to do. Right. So there are limits to this progress, but there is progress. I think this is very important to recognize. Women, and this is my judgment as a historian who has seriously and carefully studied the subject. I'm going to offer you my judgment. Women and Dalits are still discriminated and exploited across India, but women and Dalits are less unfree now than at any time in the past 5,000 years. While there is a long way to go, substantial progress has been made since independence. However, and this is the dark and untold story of social freedom in India, Adivasis or tribals are even worse off than Dalits. Yet their tragedy is not acknowledged. They are exploited in multiple ways. They do not have visible political power. The Dalits have a Mayavati. They have important state leaders in every state. You have had Dalit home ministers, finance ministers, chief justices, presidents. Adivasis are invisible. Economically, they have been seriously dispossessed by the mining companies, by the commercial forestry programs, by the large dams. In my recent book, Democrats and Dissenters, I have a long essay on the multiple tragedies of the Indian Adivasis. The Adivasis have gained least and lost most from 70 years of economic development and political democracy in India. So I've talked about political freedom, I've talked about social freedom, and my third axis is cultural freedom. How free are we culturally 70 years after independence? Now, there are two major aspects to cultural freedom. First is, am I free to speak, write, or be educated in a language of my choice? And here our record is excellent because we created linguistic states. There is a famous episode which will be familiar to some of you in the audience who are my age or older, where in 1989, Mulayam Singh Yadav became Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh for the first time, and he wrote to his counterpart in Kerala, Mr. E.K. Nayanar, he wrote a letter in Hindi. And the reply came back in Malayalam. And Mulayam Singh got the message because there were many fewer people in Lucknow who could read Malayalam than in Trivandrum who could read English. Today, if his son Akhilesh Yadav is to write to Mr. Pinari Vijayan, he will make sure he writes in English. So the Hindi chauvinists who wanted to impose a single language on all of India have failed. Many of us have learned Hindi voluntarily because of the Hindi film and the TV studios and all that. But I believe that the creation and the sustenance of linguistic states is our second greatest achievement after free and fair elections. Because every major country is based on a single language. In England, you speak only English. Welsh is a minority tongue, scorned and treated with contempt. France, to be French, you have to speak the language, and so on and so forth. The Americans are paranoid about Spanish speakers. And that we recognized that national unity does not depend on imposing a single language. To the contrary, in a country as large and diverse as ours, with such a deep civilizational history, with so many multiple languages, with their great traditions of art and music and literature, we could not impose a single language. Hindi and English could be linked languages, but no more. If you compare our achievement with that of Pakistan, when Jinnah became Governor General of Pakistan and he went to Dhaka and made his first speech, he told the Bengalis, you have to learn Urdu. Thus sowing the seeds of the civil war that led to the creation of Bangladesh. In Sri Lanka, Bandar Naike in 1956 imposed Sinhala on the Tamils, and you know how much bloodshed that caused. Okay, so our record when it comes to linguistic pluralism, the freedom to speak your own language, is excellent. Our record when it comes to religious pluralism, the freedom to worship a god or gods of your choice, is mixed. Muslims are freer in India than in China, but they suffer disproportionately in times of communal rioting. Likewise, Christians, not in Kerala, but in other parts of India. If you think of the riots against Christians in Kandahar in Odisha in 2008, you think of the riots against Sikhs in Delhi in 1984, you think of the purging of the Kashmiri Pandits by Islamic fundamentalists in Kashmir in 1989, and above all, if you think of the pathetic situation of Muslims all over India, where in every communal riot, Muslims suffer the most. If there is a Hindu-Muslim riot, as happened in Bhiwandi or Malegaon or Bhagalpur or Ayodhya, you will find that more Muslim homes are burned, more Muslim women are attacked, and more Muslims are killed. Hindus' homes are also burned, Hindus are also attacked, there is also counter-attack. But Muslims suffer disproportionately. So our record is mixed. Linguistic freedom, excellent. Religious freedom, rather dodgy. Not perfect, not hopeless, but not by no means admirable. So I've dealt with three of the legs of Swaraj: the political leg, the social leg, the cultural leg, and I'm coming finally to the economic leg. And what has been our performance here? Again, you need a little bit of historical perspective. For the first 30 years of independence, economic activity was dominated by the state. It was felt that only the government or the state could effectively bring about economic growth and end poverty, or not only the government or the state, but the state had to occupy, in Nehru's resonant phrase, a commanding place in the economy. It had to occupy the commanding heights of the economy. And this state-controlled economic development led to many distortions. It led to the creation of the license permit quota Raj, which encouraged bureaucratic and political corruption, and it stifled the entrepreneurial energies of the Indian entrepreneur. And finally, from the 80s onwards, culminating the reforms of 1991, the license permit quota Raj was dismantled. And I believe there have been many positive aspects to this. In the last 25 years, there's been a surge of entrepreneurial energy. Many new business communities have come in. They have created industries, jobs. Growth rates have gone up from roughly 3% annually to 7 or 8% annually. Poverty has spectacularly declined. From 40% of India being poor, it's closer down to 20%. So, post-economic liberalization, there has been substantial progress, but there remain two dark spots. Again, I'd like to emphasize a point I've made repeatedly in this talk. When you're dealing with a country as large and complex as India, and if you're assessing its career over a long period of 70 years, and doing so as a scholar, not as an ideologue or as a party man, you have to recognize the black, the white, the greys in between. And I believe that judged by the objective indicators of higher growth rates and reduction in poverty, there are many good things to be said about economic liberalization. At the same time, economic liberalization has two dark spots. The first dark spot is that of jobless growth. That the sectors that have done best in India, the IT industry and services, do not create many jobs. Manufacturing, which is a route China took, where they could absorb their young people, particularly young men. India is said to, people thought India will reap a demographic dividend because it had so many young people entering the workforce. That demographic dividend has become a demographic disaster because we are growing economically, but we are not creating a comparable number of jobs. And the anger and the frustration of young men is visible all across India. I'm going to ask you a question and then I'm going to give you an answer that might surprise you. What is common to Raj Thackeray's Gundas, Islamic jihadists, Hindu fundamentalists of the Bajrang Dal, and the protesters against the Jallikattu ban in Tamil Nadu? The Maratha protests, the Jat protests, the Patidar protests. These are all cases, the people committing violence and arson are young men between 18 and 30. So there is a deep social problem caused by jobless growth, and which leads to multiple forms of violence that angry, frustrated, bitter, unfulfilled young men undertake. You don't find many women doing these kinds of things. But there is also a second dark spot in our growth story. And this is the continuing degradation and deterioration of the environment. India today is an environmental basket case. Our cities have the highest rates of air pollution in the world. Every major river in India is dead, biologically dead. There is massive chemical contamination of the soil across rural India. Punjab, which was a grain bowl, has suffered because of the depletion of groundwater aquifers. And these many forms of environmental degradation affect hundreds of millions of Indians and are an embarrassment to the political and the economic, political class and the businessmen who try and suppress it. This is the dark side of economic liberalization. You have to free the market for entrepreneurs. But at the same time, you have to ensure that you have the laws in place that they do not pollute the environment so that future generations suffer. I am staying in a hotel, a very nice hotel where the organizer of the festival put me up. I had no idea where it was, and it's on the banks of the Chalihar river. I came in late at night, and I said, "Is it near the beach?" They said, "No, it's on the bank of the river." So this is Chalihar river. So something in my mind woke up, because I started life many years ago as a scholar of the environment, and I remember the Chalihar river was polluted by industry called Grassive Industries, I think owned by the Birlas, and there was a major popular movement led by the Kerala Sahitya Parishad, which led to the cleaning up of the river. And now the river has become polluted again, and no one is caring. So, and this is a small example of the terrible degradation of the environment which affects the daily lives of every Indian. If you do not have clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, if your natural resources have been depleted in such a massive way to careless, unregulated, greedy forms of capitalist development that go unchecked, your future is bleak. And I'm going to give you one quote from Gandhi, since I started with Gandhi. In 1928, Gandhi said, "God forbid that India take to industrialization after the manner of the West." God forbid that India take to industrialization of the manner of the West. Then he continues, the economic imperialism of a single tiny island kingdom, England, is keeping the world in chains. If India, a nation of 300 million, which is what it was then, takes to similar economic exploitation, it will strip the world bare like locusts. This is Gandhi in 1928. And the key phrase in that quote is, God forbid that India take to industrialization after the manner of the West. Take to industrialization. You need economic growth to remove poverty, to enhance human dignity, to create jobs. But do not do it in the careless, rapacious way that the West did it, because they had access to the colonies of the world. So, I have given you a broad overview of how we have done economically, politically, socially, and culturally. Later this year, in August, we will complete 70 years of existence as an independent nation. When the nation was born amidst the carnage of partition, few expected it to survive. A year after independence, that is in 1948, the former Commander-in-Chief of the British Indian Army, Claude Auchinleck, wrote to a friend. This is a quote from 1948. The last British CNC is writing, "The Sikhs will set up a separate regime. This will be the start of a general decentralization and breakup of the idea that India is a country, whereas it is a subcontinent as varied as Europe. The Punjabi is as different from a Madrasi as a Scot is from an Italian. The British tried to consolidate it but achieved nothing permanent. No one can make a nation out of a continent of many nations." This is an intelligent British officer who has served 20 years in India saying, no one can make a nation out of a continent of many nations, but we have. The Punjabi, the Madrasi, the Malayali, the Maharashtrian, the Gujarati, the Bengali and the Odia do live together. Largely, not always, but largely companionably and peaceably. That we survive is a remarkable achievement, and that we are a democracy even more so. We have falsified the pundits. I quoted Auchinleck, but if you read my book India After Gandhi, I quote multiple pundits of doom, right from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, saying India will break up into multiple parts, it will balkanize, it will become a military dictatorship, there will be mass famine and 200 million people, Indians will die because they can't eat and so on. Basically, from the 1940s till the 1990s and beyond, a series of Western observers and many Indian observers thought we could never survive. We have falsified the pundits, but there is still much work ahead of us. India is a union of 29 states. 26 states are at peace, but in 3 states there is turmoil: Jammu and Kashmir, Nagaland and Manipur. The press writes a lot about Kashmir, but in Nagaland and Manipur the discontent is as severe and very rarely talked about. So you may say that when we started out in 1947, we are now about 80% united. 26 out of 29 states and 3 out of 29 states, and some parts of the Maoist areas in central India are out of control of the government. But by and large, as this audience shows, we have achieved reasonable success in the project of nation building. But when it comes to the project of democracy, our record is more mixed. If I was a school teacher, I would say, and I was in the business of awarding marks, I would say, India is 80% united, but only 50% democratic. Increasingly we are becoming what I call an election-only democracy. An election-only democracy. Elections are free and fair. One party wins because the voter trusts them. But from that time to the next election, that party is totally immune from scrutiny. They can do what they want. There is no debate in assembly, parliament. Again, Kerala may be slightly better, not much better, but slightly better. And tragically, the media is complicit in this. Now look at the coverage of the UP election. The UP election is a massively important election. Almost as many people will vote in the UP election as voted in the US presidential election. It's the third largest democratic experiment in the world after the Indian general election and the US presidential election. It's more important in terms of numbers of people participating than a national election in Germany or France or England. Look at the coverage. Look at the press coverage. It is only about if Mayawati adds so many percent Muslims to the Jatavs, and if the Valmikis come and 3% Brahmins come, so much will happen. if Akhilesh goes with the Yadavs and then this will happen, and then the Congress will bring in some Muslims, but then the Brahmins will go to the BJP who will then join the Bariyas. The entire, in the most so-called sophisticated media outlets, both TV and print, the only discussion is who will win the election. What is Akhilesh's record? What should a new government do? Education, health, environment, nothing, no discussion. As if all that matters is elections. And that I think is a huge problem. Because a democracy is a process. It's a continuous process of scrutiny and self-scrutiny. And we are in danger of becoming an election-only democracy. And the consequences are there for us to see. The criminality of the political class, because all that matters is winning elections, more and more money bags and criminals are getting into politics. The shocking collapse of our education and health systems, of our police force, of our banking systems, all the decay and degradation of our institutions, and of course of our universities, shows some serious democratic deficiencies. We are an old civilization but a young nation. 70 years after independence, we Indians are more free than when the British left. I repeat, 70 years after independence, we Indians are more free than when the British left, but less free than what the framers of our constitution hoped us to be. Our political freedoms, our economic freedoms, our social freedoms, and our cultural freedoms are all constrained in small or large ways. Much work lies ahead of us. Thank you very much. I think we have about 20 minutes for questions. Somebody, I'll just, if a mic is going around, some people can put up their hands. Yes, sir. A mic will reach you. Yeah, mic. Who's got a mic? Is there a mic going around? Yeah. Yeah. Huh? I'll ask that. Yeah, go ahead.
Since you are a cricket writer too, I would like to ask you a question on cricket.
No question on cricket. Sorry, anything else fine. Because now I have a public role as a cricket writer, no question on cricket. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah. Anyone who has a question on my talk? Yeah, the gentleman, the bearded gentleman. Yeah, there. Yeah.
Hi sir, my name is Joseph. One of the things that you did not address is regarding, I think it's a social inequality. It is regarding the reservation that we have. What I've seen is, especially in Kerala, when we go around, there is no inequality between scheduled caste and OBC or socially so-called upward people. But then when it comes to education or a job or things like that, people, I don't feel that scheduled caste requires such kind of a reservation because everyone is on the same level. So, what do you think about that?
Thank you. No, it's an important question. You'll have to appreciate that I had a 40-minute talk, so I couldn't address everything. You see, in my view, the Constitution mandated reservation for scheduled castes and Adivasis because they were seriously exploited against. And I believe reservation for scheduled castes and Adivasis was necessary, and in some cases is still necessary. It needs to be better administered. For example, the creamy layer concept. From your state, you produced a remarkable man called K.R. Narayanan, who, had he not got reservation, would not have become an outstanding foreign secretary, an outstanding ambassador, and an outstanding president. Okay, but K.R. Narayanan's child got into the foreign service on the reservation. That is an anomaly in the system. So it has to be better administered, so that only one generation. So if your mother or father has got benefit, you should not get, right? You understand what I'm saying? At the same time, this OBC reservation has introduced a massive Pandora's box. That was not there in the Constitution. Constitution was only Dalits and Adivasis. OBC reservation, in my view, is more problematic because if the Marathas say they are OBC, that is everyone except a Brahmin and a Bandya is OBC. The Marathas are the dominant caste in Maharashtra. So that is a complicated business, and I believe VP Singh went against Ambedkar and the constitution. And sadly, what he did undermined the original idea of reservation. So someone like you cannot distinguish between the problems of Dalits, which are still terribly acute, and that of prosperous farmers like the Marathas. So it's a complex question. Don't see it in black and white. Yes, sir.
How can we improve democracy?
Huh?
For example, improving democracy.
Yeah.
For example, freeing it from money power.
Yeah.
Money power.
Yeah. Again, a very good question. There is an organization, excellent NGO, called Association for Democratic Reforms. You go to their website, ADR, Association for Democratic Reforms. They are the organization that filed a PI in the Supreme Court, making it mandatory for citizens to declare, for candidates to declare their assets in the criminal records. They have given some very good recommendations, very good recommendations for improving democracy. Now, every person thinks the grass is green on the other side. So don't be angry with me if I'm going to praise Kerala again. Why is the record of Kerala better than other states? Because basically you have a two-party system. That's one. There are many other reasons. The left movement, the reformers, Narayana Guru, the missionaries, progressive Maharajas. There are many reasons. But one of the reasons is you have a two-party system. Okay, now please listen to me. I'll explain. It's linked to your question. If you have 3 or 4 party system, then you appeal to the basest common denomination. So Akhilesh and Mayawati and Amit Shah are not thinking about governance, development, democracy. They are thinking about which caste to add to which caste to add to which religion to get 30% and win. Now, one of the excellent recommendations of ADR is, see what happens now. BJP won 282 seats with 31% of the vote. And outside Kerala, because in Kerala now BJP has come, but it is still in Kerala you need, in a constituency, shall we say in Kozhikode constituency, you need at least 45% of the vote to win. But in Bangalore it could be 26%. So a very good recommendation that ADR has given is, for every candidate, for MLA or MP, they have to win more than 50% of the vote. So, I am standing against you, and there is a third person. Okay, you get 51, I get 31, the other person gets 18, you win. Supposing you get 40, I get 35, and the other person gets 25. You don't win. You and I have a second round contest. So in this assembly constituency, if no one gets 50%, then immediately, because we have electronic voting, within 2 days you can have a rerun between first and second, like they do in the French presidential system. Now, if you need more than 50% votes to win an election, you will then have a totally different election program. It will be something that appeals to the majority of citizens. You will talk about education, health, roads, environment, safety. You will not talk only caste politics. I'm Dalit plus OBC plus all right. So this is one recommendation. The other recommendation they have talked about is more transparent funding, so that political parties come under RTI, so that election funding is from the state. So if you go to the ADR website, there are some many positive recommendations to improve the functioning of our democracy. Yeah.
Since you are in Kerala,
Yeah.
what is your verdict on Kerala at 70?
So, there are people here. There are people who are here who are experts. This Kerala at 60 actually, because it is Kerala at 60 since your state was formed. And again, I'm sure there's room for improvement. You have done better than other states, but you could do better still. I think I think the left did many fantastic things, but the reactionary thing it did was to suppress entrepreneurial enterprise. The left is obsessed with the organized working class and protecting their interests. And West Bengal even more. I lived 6 years in West Bengal, and the industrial sector of West Bengal was destroyed by Jyoti Basu and the Communist Party. So I think this is an area in which the left can do better. I think it's a good measure that your Chief Minister has invited good Malayali economists from around the world who have modern ideas, who don't think that Marx and Lenin had the last word of economics. So it's good. So that's good. So I think that would be, but beyond that I can't say. Sorry.
Hi sir. Sir, do you feel there's an ideological and theory poverty which is happening around in the current political parties within India?
Ideological and?
Content and theory poverty.
That's a very good question. Yes. That's right. Absolutely. See, because the difference between ideology and theory is ideology is incapable of self-correction. Theory looks at the facts and changes its mind. That's a very good distinction you make. John Maynard Keynes, the great economist, once said, "When the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do?" Okay. And now since I'm speaking in Kerala, just listen to what I'm going to tell you a story. About 3 months ago, some senior functionary of the RSS wrote to me, said, "We would like to meet you. And I'm a Democrat, I will meet with anyone unless they come with a gun." So I said, "Sure. But I will not come to your office, you will not come to my house, we will meet at Koshi's Cafe in Bangalore," which is a very nice place. We were chatting. And at some stage I was telling them we were talking about Golwalkar. He's a senior, Golwalkar he's like Lenin to the RSS. And I said, "Do you know, Golwalkar opposed linguistic states. Because he was a Hindi, he thought only Hindi. Every citizen needs one language. And some people are." So I was telling them that, you see how wrong he was. We are united because, no, you have not understood. Golwalkar did not mean this, he actually meant that. I said, "I have read Golwalkar. You are like an orthodox Hindu who says, no, actually the Vedas did not mean this. Or you are like a Leninist who says, no, Lenin did not mean this, he meant that. Even if Lenin said it in black and white. That is ideology. Theory is reflection, understanding. Now, some parties like the Congress party, not in Kerala, but Rahul Gandhi's Congress party, has neither ideology nor theory. Okay, right. So, BJP and left have ideology. Now, which party has theory, we have to see. But it's a good distinction, yeah.
Sir, you just said that the elections or the democracy in India is being an election-based democracy. Election only democracy.
Yeah.
So, with the recent advent of BJP and in other states, does it mean that religion-based politics is playing an important role in India, or does religion have an adverse effect on the conceptual meaning of democracy?
But also, not just religion, also caste.
Yeah.
Also language. Identity politics should be within limits. When Raj Thackeray says, you have to speak Marathi to work in Bombay. So I think generally the more public life is divorced from questions of identity, the better it is.
Sir, you said that in India demographic dividend turned out to be a
might turn out
to be a disaster.
Might turn out, yeah.
Why it is so?
As I said, because we have not given enough job creation. I mentioned the example of Kerala, right? Because you are protecting the interests of C2. The workers in the unorganized sector don't care because jobs are. It is because of our flawed policies, and I think we have to find a way of generating economic development, of generating jobs and protecting the environment. Only then we will have sustainable development. Yeah.
Sir, do you think emergence of more regional parties will help in strengthening the democracy? Emergence of more regional parties will help in strengthening the democracy?
It already has.
Then why
it already has, but you see, already has, but two things. Like, as you know from my writings, I am no fan of Narendra Modi, right? But people call him a fascist, including one famous leader from your state has called him a fascist, right? Other people say he will bring another emergency. That cannot happen. Because in 1975, when Indira Gandhi brought the emergency, the Congress ruled every state in India except Tamil Nadu. Today, there is opposition to Modi everywhere. Right? So, regional party, a diversity of parties is good, but two things. It's important that you have in each state a healthy two-party competition. Actually, the three states that are doing best have done best in terms of human development indices like education, health, gender equality are Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Himachal, all of which have stable two-party systems. Right. So if you have multiple parties or one party like in West Bengal is there for 35 years, it leads to arrogance and all of that. Right? The second thing is, the other danger in Indian democracy, and Modi is a representative of this, and in that respect he is like Indira Gandhi. The party is not important, the leader is paramount. There is a personality cut. Luckily in Kerala you have spared that. Even the great EMS Namboodiripad was not a personality cut leader. But everywhere, Jayalalitha or Karunanidhi, Mamta, Bal Thackeray, Naveen Patnaik, when one person represents the party. So the equation is, Indira Gandhi's equation was, Indira Gandhi equals the Congress party Indira Gandhi equals the Congress party equals India. Oh really? Indira Gandhi equals the All India Congress Committee equals the Congress Working Committee equals the High Command equals the Congress Party equals Delhi equals India. Right? Now, that is very wide. No, if you give one, Ambedkar, again, Ambedkar was so wise. If you see my anthology, Makers of Modern India, it has a speech by Ambedkar to the Constituent Assembly where he said, it's a fantastic speech, he said, Bhakti in religion, this is 1949, he said, Bhakti in religion is the route to the salvation of the soul. Bhakti in politics is a route to dictatorship. And then he went on to say, there is no reason not to acknowledge a great man's contribution to the country. You acknowledge Narayan Guru's contribution to Kerala or EMS Namboodiripad's contribution or Achita Menon's. But, Ambedkar says, so you must acknowledge a great man or great woman's contribution. But to lay your liberties at the feet of the leader is to surrender your conscience completely, and it will be a route to dictatorship. And that's a prophetic remark. Look at the attacks on the press in Mamta's West Bengal. Of course, Modi is a good example of that. So these are the worries we have to think about. These are the other issues where our democracy needs more thinking, more clarity, more self-correction. 3 minutes. One last question.
Sir, just before your session.
But once again, I am very, very surprised that in Kerala I haven't had a question from a woman as yet. So who's got a volunteer? Please, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you. And make it as tough as you want.
I was expecting more from you about the freedom of speech, because in your latest books where you wrote much on that.
Yes.
And my question is not that. You said 18 to 30, the children from Bajrang Dangal, for many rights, youngsters are being used. Do you think a lot of, they are being caught young to be brainwashed? Is there some activity going on in India?
Yeah. So I think I did not speak because my topic was different. And last week in Tirur at the Tunchan Memorial, I spoke on freedom of speech. And there are some people here in the audience, including the Mr. Ramanuni who invited me and others. So, but there is some brainwashing, but it will be resisted. In the world of the internet, you can't tell lies for too long. But of course, there is organized attempts to intimidate on social media. I mean, I suffer from that. The rewriting of textbooks. By the way, we started in this Kerala, we started in this state under the communist government of 57-59. If you go to India after Gandhi and read an account of what was done to the textbooks by that communist government. And I think I once said, you remember that Murli Manohar Joshi was our education minister. I said Murli Manohar, RSS man, I said Murli Manohar Joshi is a true Leninist. It's the Leninists who manipulate textbooks. These guys take it further. And the difference between the Marxists and the RSS is this, that when the Marxists have to choose a vice chancellor for, shall we say, Calicut University, they won't choose the best person, the second best person, the third best person, the fourth best person. They'll choose the 10th or 20th best person. When the BJP has to choose, they'll choose the 500th best person. Okay. But you want the best person, you know what? Okay, so you see. So I think, tragically, this is very important to recognize, when it comes like corruption institutions, when it comes to manipulation of textbooks, harassment of the press. The BJP has learned from what the Congress and the left did, and because they are more anti-intellectual, they are more ruthless, they are more ideological, they take it to a much more dangerous level. But there was never any golden age when it comes to freedom of expression in India, you know. And that's something you have to recognize. But as I said, I think a festival like this is a manifestation that, you know, we will continue to debate and argue. And and for example, by the way, if I make one last point about this, which I did not make in Thiru, you know, there is a Jaipur Literary Festival. I do not attend it. That is for aesthetic reasons, you know. I don't go to destination festivals. I know these are the people of Kerala who have come, you know, they've not come to see some palaces and all that, right? But that's different. Now, this year they called two RSS people. And there was a lot of protest. I think they were within their rights to call RSS people. I think next time they should also call. What was wrong was, their sponsor was Z. It was called the Z Jaipur Literary Festival. Z is a pernicious media organization. As soon as the BJP came to power, they removed all critical articles about Amit Shah from their website. They totally distorted the JNU case. It is owned by a man who is a BJP MP who bought a seat in the Rajya Sabha. Should a literary festival, which is supposed to be international, of course you must invite RSS people, they are also part of our society. You want to, I told you I met the RSS people, but when you make compromise like this, you know, when liberal progressive people, just to get money and funding, will go to the most corrupt, ruthless media organization. I mean, it is the dregs. I mean, it is absolutely the dregs. Arnab Goswami is a saint compared to Z. Alright. So I think so we have to introspect. What I'm trying to tell you is, attacking the BJP is easy. We have to introspect about what are our faults. How have we allowed them to do what they do? Thank you.
Now I invite Mr. Dinesh Khetri